Okay, so I grew up in Ghana, and so I went to junior high school, and then I went forward to do my senior high school at Infanspim, where I had the chance to be the domestic head prefect. It's something that I'd rarely say, but because I just came on board here, I'll just mention it. And there, before I even went to high school, I had a crazy interest for French. So I went to Alliance Française for 3 months after junior high school. I just had this crazy interest for the French language because my dad travels a lot, and every time he came back with some language CDs. So it just happened that I was always, getting into the French language. I became so good at it. My professor even was so interested, like very excited by the way I was writing my essays. But then I went to senior high school and I didn't, really do anything with the French. So I read science with geography. I didn't really like biology because I didn't really think I could survive it. So fast forward, after 3 years, I was now getting ready to go and do a bachelor's degree. Now I wanted to be a pilot. Some parts of me still wants to be a pilot. By the time, my dad, who works in the industry, said planes are becoming computerized. So if you could, up your skill, get to know a bit about this whole tech thing, anything could happen. You could become incapacitated. You may not be able to travel again. At least have a degree that you can fall on so that in case anything happens, you can still, have a career. So at the time, it sounded like good advice, and tech was, you could work everywhere. So I went forward to read IT at University of Ghana.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Techpeeps Diaspora. On this show, we have conversations with successful tech professionals from Africa and the diaspora, such as software engineers, data analysts, product managers, and many more. So our guest for today is Raymond. Hi Raymond, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here.
I was, kind of hesitant to pronounce your full name because it's a really long name, but I'm gonna leave that to you. So could you, our audience, give us a brief introduction about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Okay, so thank you so much for having me, Zach, once again. So my name is Raymond Klutse. I am a trained data scientist, currently working as a data consultant here in the UK. I've been in my company, Big Spark, for about almost 3 years. I'm a musician. I am also a musician, apart from my work. So I do create music, and I'm the only boy for my parents. I love to talk. I'm a sanguine, but I also have, my days of where I like to also, hide from everyone and go on my periodic hiatus. I like interacting with people. I like having conversations, and I'm actually very glad to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Before the call, I was kind of thinking to myself how this conversation is gonna go, because also, like, from your profile, I see that like you speak fluently multiple languages. You also have a podcast.
Right.
Apart from, you also cook. So,
right.
I was kind of thinking where I want to take this conversation to. But
I'll just let you be the captain of this ship. Wherever you want to go, I'll go with you.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna be too selfish. So I'm gonna try to stick to the tech stuff.
Right.
I think for most of our viewers, like, something that would be really interesting is like, what does a data scientist or a data analyst do? Could you give us, some explanation of what the role is about?
Right. So essentially, a data analyst is looking out for, some insights in the data. So a data analyst will have some questions, in terms of what does the distribution look like? What profit has the company been able to make over a period of time? What are some of the factors that contributed to that? So it's just a general insight into that. However, the work is gradually, encapsulating, or it's actually including other areas where people are now going further to do some form of, visualization and all that. So you can see there's a bit of an overlap with BI and all that. But essentially, a data analyst's job is to be able to present data in an understandable format to stakeholders to understand, or to be able to answer some questions that stakeholders have. For a data scientist, however, it's the same data, or it could be the same data that they have, but this time they want to be be able to make some predictions. So the data boom, people say data is the new oil. So everyone is, getting into data whatsoever. So we have the analytics bit of it, and then we have the data science bit of it, where now you want to be able to see if you can identify some patterns in that data. So over a period of time, you can realize that, okay, these are different features that are able to help you make some prediction about, for example, if someone is male or female. I know for the context of those who are watching and listening, I'm going to put it in the boundaries of just male and female without necessarily going out of those boundaries. But say that is what you want to necessarily predict on a biological sense. You have a few features, whether it has to do with height, whether it has to do with color, all that kind of stuff. A data scientist will want to see how I can gain some insight, identify if there's some specific patterns that cut across all males or all females to be able to make a prediction. Another way of, or another that description can be made more clear, is making a prediction about whether there's going to be an increase of maybe house prices in a particular area over a period of time. So what a data scientist will have is data over a period of time of the different prices, the different factors that affected it, whether it had to do with GDP, whether it had to do with even policy or whatsoever, and see if all those variables coming together are able to help us make predictions of maybe next year based on what we have learned over the period of time. We can make some predictions. So basically, a data analyst is looking forward to gain some first-hand insights into the data, whilst a data scientist's work will be more about predicting the next event based on the data they currently have.
Yeah, that kind of gives me, an impression that like these roles are closely related and probably they work together. But we are gonna get a bit deep into that later. Now I'm kind of interested in what your background is like. What was it like growing up? Right. Family, school, stuff like that.
All right. Okay, so I grew up in Ghana, and so I went to junior high school, and then I went forward to do my senior high school at Infanspim, where I had the chance to be the domestic head prefect. It's something that I'd rarely say, but because I just came on board here, I'll just mention it. And there, before I even went to high school, I had a crazy interest for French. So I went to Alliance Française for 3 months after junior high school. I just had this crazy interest for the French language because my dad travels a lot, and every time he came back with some language CDs. So it just happened that I was always, getting into the French language. I became so good at it. My professor even was so interested and very excited by the way I was writing my essays. But then I went to senior high school and I didn't really do anything with the French. So I read science with geography. I didn't really like biology because I didn't really think I could survive it. So fast forward, after 3 years, I was now getting ready to go and do a bachelor's degree. Now I wanted to be a pilot. Some parts of me still wants to be a pilot. By the time, my dad, who works in the industry, said planes are becoming computerized. So if you could, up your skill, get to know a bit about this whole tech thing, anything could happen. You could become incapacitated. You may not be able to travel again. At least have a degree that you can fall on, so that in case anything happens, you can still, have a career. So at the time, it sounded like good advice, and tech was, you could work everywhere. So I went forward to read IT at University of Ghana. I don't think I entered University of Ghana being excited about learning or doing tech. I think I did it because I felt it was going to be a gateway for me to get into the field I wanted to get into, that is, being a pilot. So I struggled. And I say this, confident that I did really struggle during my time in University of Ghana, because I look back at the time I spent there and I look at the things that I know now, and I feel that if I'd gone in there with a more if I'd gone in there more informed, if I'd gone in there with more enthusiasm, I would have probably been able to make some money and maybe be a better developer than I am today. So I didn't finish as well as I wanted to. I broke my back as much as I could. I do not regret the journey because I believe that all adds up to where I am today. So I did my IT degree, graduated, and my final year project was on a traffic navigation system. So at the time, Google did not have any traffic information for Ghana, so knowing whether there's going to be traffic congestion here or there. So I saw the opportunity, and at that time I'd studied a bit of algorithms, and I got to know about the A-star algorithm, Dijkstra's algorithm for pathways and all that. So I wanted to add all that and be able to do something with what I'd learned, because a lot of the things I was doing at a particular point in time was very hypothetical. It was very theoretical. I'll go into the class and we are doing coding stuff, and we are using Visual Basic, or we are coding in Java whatsoever. It just felt so far away from me. I was not really I wasn't really connecting as much. But it was my final year project that I felt like, okay, I was doing something that really touched, or that really reflected the skills that I had. So in terms of the app, so I did it in Android, so I did use Android Studio and all that. In terms of the app, it wasn't really a good looking app, because I'm not a UI UX designer. No, it was a good app. But in terms of functionality, I really learned a lot. I got to know about the Google API, how to be able to detect speed. So there were times where I used to run in my house to be able to see if I could see the speed. And it was very fun times. And my sister and I talk about it a lot. She can't still believe that I am still in tech, because she looks back at how I struggled, but then I still find myself here. So fast forward, I didn't finish as a very top student in University of Ghana, or in the IT class, for different reasons, some of which I would not mention, some of which were even beyond us as students. But then, because my department really liked the projects I worked on, they wanted me to stay as a teaching assistant. And if anyone knows, you staying as a teaching assistant, it means that you are, really brainy. You are a first class student who knows his way around, or his or her way around things. But that wasn't my case. So I really struggled with the idea of, staying as a teaching assistant. And guess what? At the same time, too, I had the opportunity to go and work with the IT department at Starbow, one of the airlines at the time, second to Africa World. And I'd done an internship there prior in their IT department. And at least it was a clear gateway. I want to be a pilot. So get to, be around the pilots, and should an opportunity present itself, I just go to piloting school. Unfortunately, they collapsed during the time when I was getting ready. So a lot of things didn't work in my favor in terms of that national service. So I had both options, whether to go and do it at Starbow, or to do it at University of Ghana. Spoke with my parents, spoke with my dad, a bit of consultation, and then I decided to be a teaching assistant, which then opened me to an amazing man that I always talk about in my life, Mr. Annan, who was doing his professional doctorate in data science at University of East London. And he mentioned that whole aspect of data science, and I was like, what is this? Because I was looking for a way out. And yes, that's basically the summary of how I found myself in data science. If you want to know, we can go on and on how I eventually went to get a master's in data science, and I even find that to be very surreal. But yes, that's a bit of the summary of my tech journey. I hope I've been able to capture and answer the question clearly.
Yeah, actually, I'm really interested to go deep down that route, but one thing that you said which really caught my attention was the fact that before you went to university and to study IT, you didn't have any prior knowledge of what to expect and stuff like that. And I think that is a similar experience that most people, at least people that go to school in Ghana, also face for the courses. What do you think this is usually the case?
So for me, my sister was in University of Mines and Technology, and she had this great set of guys who were the Glavion guys. They were doing some amazing stuff, and it was good and it was great. But I think I didn't take my time to get to know what they were doing. She just told me about the fancy stuff they were doing, but I didn't get the chance to interact with them one-on-one. And that's advice I'll give to anyone who is starting something new, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a business or whatsoever. Information is in abundance all over the internet. Don't just jump into something blindly thinking it's going to be all hunky-dory and rosy. If you're thinking about a career, most schools have this kind of career development, or have this career fairs and everything. Some schools may not necessarily have it. A lot of companies are also looking at ways to, hire people for like at internships. Even junior high school students get a chance to, intern there. Those opportunities will give you the chance to be able to interact with people. If there are boot camps, or if you're active on LinkedIn, just read and get to know what it is like on a daily, because there's a social media bit of the work that people aspire to do. I had a conversation with a lady and she was like, the glamour around being a lawyer is exciting, but the everyday work of being a lawyer is not very exciting. Reading cases, a lot of things, it's not exciting. We are both developers. People see it and all they just see is the money. Oh my God, you have a house, you have the kind of, you have 2 MacBook Pros and everything. That is great. But then the everyday work of a developer, where you are sitting behind a bug, or maybe you're trying to, install a software to do your actual coding. Like it happened to me 2 days ago. I was trying to install something with WSL in one of our client systems. It took me about 2 days to just even get that thing up and running because of the different proxies and everything. So just have conversations with people. If you aspire to be like people, sit with them and don't just ask them the glamour or the glamorizing questions of, oh, so how much money do you make? No, ask them the question, what does it take to make money like this? What does it take to have a sustained career like that? So that when you are getting in there, you know that you're going towards a goal. And that's a mistake I believe I made. Although IT was not the final destination for me, if I had spent a little bit more time talking with these guys that my sister was mentioning, Glavion and all that, maybe they could have been of better mentorship to even guide the work I did. But the funny thing is, life comes to you in a full circle, because I didn't get the mentorship at the beginning, but I got it at the end, and I got a chance to work with them on a project that was similar to Uber. So we're trying to create an Uber-like system for clients in Canada, and that's where even the whole thing about the traffic engine thing I was working on, seeing the speed and all that, I got to see Android development in a better light. I got to see my mistakes of when to use a fragment and when to use an activity. I got to be mentored by those amazing guys. So Saeed, Thomas.
Saeed.
Oh, you know him? Yeah, I think Saeed is. I think
Germany now. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's in Germany. Yes, so I got a chance to interact with Saeed, Thomas, Darko, and Fitzgerald. Those guys. When I think about my tech journey, I really respect the patience they had with me, because I wasn't a great developer. I don't even still think I'm too great a developer now, but I'm better than where I used to be, definitely.
So fast forward, so you had like some sort of basis foundation after university, after building your project, you learned a few stuff, and fast forward, you did a master's. I'm sure like there are certain things that happened along the way which something must have given you the confidence to say, okay, now I'm ready to enter into like the job market. What was that process for you after school?
Right. So doing like having spent some time with my boss, and he kept on talking about the whole data science thing. That was the first time I heard about data and science. It was all weird to me. So I applied to a school, a top university in France. I actually even know they were a top university until I got in, and they gave me IoT. Now, if anyone knows me from my days in University of Ghana, I didn't like networking. Cisco Packet Tracer always gave me headache. I tried to understand DNS. I mean, I still do now. I understand it much better because I've gone further to expand my knowledge in the cloud and all that. But at the time, it wasn't really interesting for me. Although at the time, people, the whole world is going to be connected. IoT, you're going to see this device connected here. So it was the hype, and it's always exciting. The school I wanted to go to, the other school I wanted to go to, they didn't give me the data. In fact, they didn't even admit me at all. So I spoke with my parents. They were like, you know what, just go and do this IoT, and let's at least have it as a master's, and then later you can pivot. So I went to my school, and the first year or the first semester, it was a French school. So I did my studies in both French and English. Nice. So it was a bit of a challenge, even though I spoke a bit of French, and I'll come to that because I went to French summer school a month before. I love the French language, so for me it was like an opportunity to learn it more. So So the first semester, so the first semester, they make all of us do the same thing. So those who are supposed to do data science, those who are supposed to do IoT, those who are supposed to do information security, governance, whatever it is, we all do the same thing. And I did about 16 courses in the first semester. It was intense. If anyone knows about the French educational system, it's very, very rigorous. I was spending my entire day indoors. I was only Ghanaian in my school, because Ghanaians seldom go to France to go and do their course in French and English, let alone in a part of the country that was in the outskirts. I was in the Western Atlantic. It was away from the life of. I was in Paris. I was at Brest, and if you come out of my school, you're going to the ocean. So that was the kind of life I was living. It was very living in the countryside. And it was a very, very hard experience for me, because a part of me was not very happy with IoT that I wanted to do. But just seeing that first semester and the rigor involved, it was very challenging. So we had a meeting with one of the course supervisors, and he said he knows a few people who want to change their courses, but then they are only going to do that based on our performance in the first semester. So I went further to break my back. So I was spending time every single day in the library, group work. It was a lot of rigor. It was a lot. In fact, I have had challenges in my life, and I even thought, I think some of the things I've had in my life, or some of the events that have transpired in my life, I thought were very painful. Every now and then, when I think back at the kind of rigor I had, I was like, what? Maybe what I'm going through is not as bad. But they required us to pass our statistics, our math, our programming, for them to consider you for another course. And for the data science course, they were looking forward to C, Python, and all that. It was a very challenging time, because I had passed some of the courses that they were considering, and now I put in my application for a change of a course, only for me to put in the application, and then some of the courses that is required, I failed. But fortunately for me, the fail didn't reflect right away. So they had already accepted me into the data science program. But then, just when I'm now moving into a new domain, because I hadn't done so much statistics, or I didn't do a lot of statistics back in university and all that, I still had to write or reset 2 modules in that same semester together with my data science program. It was so hard, and that semester was going to be the semester we were going to study in French. We're talking about presentations, we're talking about meeting clients, we're talking about doing a French project. I had a chance to work with some guys on using 3D modeling of bio-friendly reeds of a bassoon, to be able to see if we can create, because the reed is mostly made of wood. All right, it's made of wood, but they wanted to see if we could have a bio-friendly 3D version that can produce the same sound waves. So we're doing signal processing and Fourier transform. It was very intense, and all of that in French. I was the only Ghanaian and a black person in the team, and I keep saying that the kind of rigor I went through in France was such a challenging one, but it really built me in so many ways, and I'm really grateful for that. So I ended up getting into the data science program, got the chance to work with, it was a class of about 7 to 8 people, and one guy even dropped out at a point because it was too intense. During that period, we studied big data science, so modeling, did a bit of class. There was a lot. We interacted with client, market, customer segmentation, prediction. It was a lot of rigor, and then the last semester was preparing you towards that period to go into market. So my school, I don't know how it is in Germany, but in my school, you're required to do a 6-month intensive internship at the end of your program. I wanted to get more experience, so after my first semester, I got a chance to work in my school's incubator as an AI engineer. So I was working on, some sentiment analysis, using pre-trained models to be able to detect. So we're doing text, so we're doing speech to text, and we're supposed to do it on French. So the pre-trained model was trained on English, but then it can be able to make predictions in French. So I had to now use that, put it together, it was a lot. And then I had the chance to work in a fintech at the end of my program. So they were working on, credit scoring models to be able to be able to predict if people are, high risk or not. And that's where I got a chance to do low level, dirty data science work. And yeah, so that preparation for industry, my school put a structure together that prepared you for that. Then COVID happened, and we'll talk about that if you want to get to know about the details of that. But yes, that was pretty much the journey of preparing me to be ready for industry.
Nice. So, and now you are a data scientist and data analyst at Spark. Big Spark. Like, what's your day to day? And even before we get to that, like, I'm curious how like the interview process for like your role is like. Could you like give an example of how it was, at least for getting into Big Spark?
Right. I'm a bit of a storyteller, so I'll pull you back into the COVID and bring you back in. So during COVID, after school, COVID happened. I was looking for a job, so I was at home for almost close to a year. I had to go back to Ghana, come back again. And a friend of mine was also looking for a job at the same time, and he mentioned that his company is looking for he got a job, and then he told me his company is looking for data engineers. He asked me a few questions about, Spark, Hadoop, the typical stack. And I was like, oh yeah, I know these stuff. I've been able to do some projects whilst I was in school. And he recommended me. So I got my job through recommendation. So he recommended me, the boss checked me out, saw my skills. He was like, okay, I like this guy. He's very determined, blah, blah, blah. So it was first, an informal discussion with the boss to just get to know who you are, get to know how you behave and everything. Then I was given a technical challenge. So I was given a data engineering challenge to, tackle. So it was a take-home challenge. I had to get back to them like a week. They gave me all the systems that I had to work with. I had to use Zeppelin. You had to set up the entire environment and all. The beautiful thing is at the time, I had a chance to be able to interact with my boss because it was a startup. They were getting ready to get a lot more people in. So that was how it went. I did a technical challenge. I had to now prepare for the presentation. So I went further to do a PPT, presented my findings. So I showed them the code. I pushed my code to GitHub for them to get to know that I know how to work with exactly source control and like all that. So I was very keen on, showing the different skills that will, make me stand out. And I spoke about that a lot. And after I went into the details of the work, how I cleaned up the data, all that kind of stuff, the pipelining, and then I showed the work. So it was a 3-stage interview. And after I had the final conversation with the boss, just get to know me on a human level. What am I like? What are my strengths? Am I more technical than managerial? What do I see myself doing in the long term? And then they liked me. So then they sponsored my visa for me to move from France to the UK. So my trajectory was a rather interesting one. Not everyone gets a chance to come and study in one other country and then they get a chance to be poached into another country. I wouldn't say I'm the smartest in the tech space. I really give all the credit to God. I'm very much Christian, so I give all the credit to God for opening that door for me. And so that's how I got into Big Spark, and I've been there for almost, this May will be 3 years since I joined Big Spark. Yeah.
Nice. That's really interesting. So what's like your day-to-day, like working at Big Spark? What's the vibe like working in the teams?
Right.
What kind of products you're working on?
Right. So you did say I work as a data analyst and data scientist. I just want to correct that a little bit. I am a trained data scientist, but I'm currently working as a data consultant. So I'm working as a consultant firm, and then we consult for a variety of clients, most of which are financial services. So I'm currently working with one of like the teams where we consult for a bank. So I'm working in the team that is doing a project with the bank. So the thing about consulting is you are wearing so many hats. You are doing what the clients want. So even though I'm a trained data scientist, I'll be lying to you if I said I have done a lot of data science work since I started at Big Spark. I've done more data engineering, more software engineering, and DevOps. So my first work at Big Spark was to be able to create it was more software engineering focused. I was supposed to create a connector for one of our data engineering platforms, which is StreamSets. So I had to create a connector that was going to connect to Neo4j. So they didn't have a Neo4j connector, so I had to now create a custom one. So I had to go into the Neo4j website, get to see the API, get to see what all that looks like, wrap that around some Python code, or it was actually Java. Sorry, I will wrap that around Java, and then go through the whole creating the jar and then uploading that to the StreamSets platform. So that was my first task. Then I had the chance to be able to see a pipeline from end to end and what that looks like. Then when I went to the client side, it was more of, at the beginning, it was more of banks sometimes maybe using a bit of Excel here and there. So it was more of, working around some of those systems until I was put on the task to develop. It was a Python package to be able to do some data engineering stuff. So they had a feature store, and then they wanted to be able to read those features in a in a seamless manner. So I had to now go through, using different, calling functions upon functions and all that kind of stuff. So I had to implement a lot of things to be able to create that system, and which gladly is currently still being used in the bank. So that was the project I worked on. So the beginning was very much software engineering focus and a bit of data engineering. So that particular task, so we had the data stored in a data store. So it was in Hadoop, and then I had to now create that Python package to be able to read it. And the goal is to read it in an efficient manner, because because if we are giving people the chance to write their own scripts to read data, they may not have very optimized, data pipelines and all that, and then they could, affect the system and cause a lag. So the goal was to have one point of entry into that data warehouse, or into that data lake. It's a data lake we actually had, so that we are the ones on our layer are able to control how that data is queried and how that data is manipulated and presented back to the user. I did that for a while until I was moved to another team where we're developing an API, and I had to use GraphQL, Spring Boot. So I did a bit more of API development stuff, and then currently I'm now doing more of DevOps, GitLab here and there. So consulting is very, you have to meet the demands of the client. You go in there, you may have interests. Apart from doing that on the consulting side, I also have my own thing that I've been doing internally in Big Spark, trying to work on the transpiler, so using ASTs. And I know I've mentioned a lot of terms, and some of my friends will probably be watching this video and be like, oh my God, wow, Raymond sounds very brainy. It's been a long journey. Even for me, talking about these things on a podcast, on a YouTube channel, makes me appreciate the growth. Although sometimes I feel like, okay, maybe I've not made as much growth. Makes me appreciate the growth. So how does it feel like to work in Big Spark? So Big Spark is a multicultural company. Currently we have about 15 to 18 Ghanaians if I'm mistaken. Yeah. So it's quite a small Ghanaian community. It's a fully remote company. So you can work from anywhere, but then you have to be in the UK because of our client's request. But then we have different silos. So we have people in Leeds, people in London area, people in Scotland. So they do have their meetups from time to time. Online, we try to engage on different in different activities. Keep the vibe going. We have periodic meetups. So the people in London area, the people in the Midlands, the people in Scotland, they do get to meet, interact, and we do have our yearly company meetings, which one will be coming up very soon in April, where we meet up, we chit chat, those who need to be congratulated for blah blah blah. So we are very much a remote company, so it's more of a lot of things are done online. If need be that we meet face to face, yes, when the need arises, we do get a chance to meet. Yeah.
It's really amazing how you're able to juggle lots of different things and experiment with different things and work with different things.
Zach, it's been hard. I wouldn't want anyone to be listening to this and think I'm superhuman, or even think that I have it all covered. I like to be very transparent, and if you ask me, it's been hard juggling it all, because apart from even these technical stuff, I recently got the chance to get my company to collaborate with Nottingham Trent University on a project, which is is like an AI project coming up. And that also requires a whole set of skills, managerial stuff and everything. And I'm just learning over the period of time to acknowledge the fact that I would not always have everything under control. I will control the things that I can control. The things that are beyond me, I will accept that, okay. I'll accept the times where I failed. That there are some of the projects that my boss is asking me about progress on. If I emailed me today, wants me to go and talk to a client about it, and the project is still in the skeleton state. But then there are a lot of other things that are pulling me on different sides. So all I just try to tell people is the beauty on the outside seems nice, but then there's some reality. I don't have it all figured out. Even my career, trying to look for the next, or trying to think about the next thing I want to do in my career. I would lie to you if I said, I have a clear path. But I'm currently reading a book, and the reason why I'm bringing it in is because you're going to ask about what I'm currently reading, or unless you want me to talk about that later.
No,
Should I leave?
Let's go ahead.
Sure. All right. Since you said I said you're going to be the captain, but since you say you're going to not be selfish, okay. Oh well, that's fine. So you are learning about you are learning about, or you are reading about being a programmer. I'm just learning about building career capital. A friend of mine recommended this book to me. So good, They Can't Ignore You by Carl Newport. And the reason why I've been enjoying the book is it's been helping me understand that building your career is not a destination, it's a journey. Maybe I've been a trained data scientist who has worked in a consulting firm and knows all these things. Maybe ultimately after a year or two I may think like I want to do something different away from all this, and it shouldn't surprise people, neither should it even surprise me. I should be able to naturally evolve. The only thing is that I should have the relevant skills for the kind of career I want to have, and that's what and that is Carl's argument, that why skills trump passion. Because people say, follow your passion. Who really goes to university and says their passion is writing programs? I mean, exactly. Let me be honest with you. The reason why we are doing this programming thing is because we need to pay our bills. It's not every day that we get a chance to sit behind code and we're excited about it. But then because we've built those skills, people want to pay us for those skills. So yes, I'm learning to be more flexible and open about my career and what it's going to look like in the future. Who knows? Maybe to change in this year, next year. I don't know, but we'll see.
Talking about something different, outside of work, I know you also have like a podcast. I think it's called the Techpeeps podcast. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so I could talk about the Techpeeps podcast forever because it's my baby and I really enjoy, growing it to where it is. So for me, when I was getting into tech, like you did see or you did hear about my winding journey, right? Everything was just fixated around becoming a programmer, learning how to code. But then I started interacting with people and I realized that there is so much going on in this tech space that is not even necessarily fixated around coding. You may need to know some basic coding skills, obviously, but there were so many industries. And my main goal for the podcast was to highlight people who are using tech as well. Because whenever we talk about tech these days, tech is not the final destination. Tech is enabling us to solve some problem. A company will pay you for what you can develop, but then they are trying to solve a problem, and that's why they're looking for problem solvers. A company is not just going to brag about the fact that they have very good programmers. How does that product, even that API you develop, how does that translate into value in the long term? So the Techpeeps podcast is where we navigate today's tech wave, one electrifying conversation at a time. My goal is to just, get people on board, people who have actually even left the tech space, and tell us about why they left. I had a friend of mine who left to become a chef, Chef Keeks. I had a friend of mine who left to become a travel experience designer. We were both classmates. I don't know if you know about Move Africa.
Nah.
Yeah, so like the travel agency in Ghana, and he's doing very well for himself. I also have people who have left the pharmacy field to become product managers. So I'm just in there to just shine a bit of light on the different parts of tech. My new season coming up very soon is going to have different parts of tech in there, from people who are using tech to help people in the disability space, people who are rent a power bank. These things are very rare, and it's all a matter of, APIs, building software, hardware, and all that. So I just come in to, get people to have a different feel to tech conversations, and not just feel like everyone who gets into tech has to be buried in this four corner of just coding. And it's my little light that I'm trying to shine in the tech space. Hopefully, so far it's been great. Hopefully, in the long term, it becomes people.
Where can people tune in and listen to this?
Yeah, so the TechStuff podcast is on YouTube. The audio is on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Until as long as they are still a podcast, Google Podcast, because according to them, they'll be vanishing soon. But yes, it's on these 3 platforms for now. So if you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, you can check that out. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts is available for your listening.
Nice. Thanks, Raymond, for all the inspirational messages and the interesting conversation. Do you have any last words or something profound that you want to share?
I would say be patient with yourself in this journey. I realize that we tend to be very hard on ourselves when things don't go as planned, and I'm a culprit. I wouldn't say I keep saying I wouldn't say I have it all covered, but be patient with yourself. Look at me. I didn't really see myself doing tech, but now I'm here going to start working with the university on a tech project. So celebrate the small wins. Take inventory of how far you've come. Try and just speak with people who are ahead of you. Get mentors if you can. If you cannot get mentors, become a mentor, because by mentoring you start seeing a few gaps, and then you see what you could have done better. Then you're able to tailor your learning further. Be curious. Do not be afraid of new environments. I went to France, do my master's. I did my master's in French and in English. Had a winding road with that. It wasn't comfortable, but that has built me. And my personal mantra is to stay resilient and to go for gold. And I've had to live that mantra in so many ways altogether. So stay curious. Allow yourself to breathe. If you need to cry sometimes, don't be afraid to cry. It's very normal. Human beings, whether you're a man or a woman, cry if you need to. But don't sweat the small stuff. In the grand scheme of things, you look back and you realize that you look back and you realize that you may have robbed yourself of some opportunities because you were thinking too much about how incapable you are. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Try and see how you can expand your strengths or use your strengths more, and also then see how you can translate your weaknesses into more of strength, and the ones that you cannot do much about, you take it as is and you just look to the future for more opportunities. And then stay active as well. Network as much as you can. Online presence is very important. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. No one really cares. That's the truth of the matter. So don't be too afraid. And enjoy the journey whilst you're at it. That's my final words. I know it's a lot of words, but those are my final words.
Really
obviously for a talker and a podcaster, so apologies.
Thanks a lot, Raymond.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. And that's it, folks. Thanks a lot for tuning in. See you in the next one. Cheers.